The sun hung low over the cracked asphalt of Elmwood's forgotten outskirts, casting long shadows that stretched like fingers across the rusted chain-link fence. Every Sunday, without fail, little Lily stood there, 8 years old, her faded blue dress hanging loose on her slender frame, clutching a worn stuffed bear that had seen better days. Her dark hair, tangled from the wind, whipped around her face as she peered through the bars, eyes wide, with a hope that twisted the gut of anyone who noticed. The orphanage gates loomed behind her, a cold sentinel to the life she'd known since the accident that stole her parents 5 years back. No one came, not anymore. The visitors dwindled like echoes in an empty hall, leaving her to wait alone, the distant hum of traffic mocking her silence. That afternoon, as thunder rumbled on the horizon, a low growl pierced the quiet, an engine's roar, deep and unyielding, like the earth's own heartbeat. It started faint, then swelled, until the ground vibrated beneath Lily's sneakers. She froze, bear pressed tight to her chest, as a lone figure on a battered black Harley rolled to a stop just beyond the fence. The man was weathered, mid-40s, with a salt-and-pepper beard framing a face etched by scars, both seen and unseen. His leather vest, patched with the faded emblem of the Iron Vow Riders, a coiled serpent around a broken chain, creaked as he killed the engine. Ethan Hale. He'd ridden these roads for 2 decades, carrying ghosts heavier than his saddlebags. Once a soldier, now a wanderer, he lived by codes etched in blood and ink, loyalty above all, promises kept or died trying. Ethan's eyes, sharp under the brim of his worn cap, locked on the girl. He'd passed this place 100 times, but today something pulled him off the highway, a nagging whisper from the past. Like the echo of a brother's dying words, "Watch over the little ones, Eth. Family ain't blood, it's what you fight for." His old war buddy, gone too soon in a desert skirmish, had made him swear it on a starlit night. Ethan had buried that vow under miles of blacktop, but seeing Lily there, small and unyielding against the world's indifference, cracked it open. He swung a leg over the bike, boots crunching gravel, and approached the fence. The air smelled of rain-soaked earth and exhaust, thick with the promise of storm. "Hey, kid," he said, voice gravelly but soft, crouching to her level. Lily flinched at first, then met his gaze, those eyes, haunted like his own. "You waitin' for someone?" She nodded, barely audible. "My uncle. He said he'd come, every Sunday." Ethan's jaw tightened. Uncles who forgot, promises that faded. He'd seen it shatter lives. The orphanage buzzer sounded in the distance, a harsh reminder of routines that ground down hope. He glanced at the empty road, then back to her. "World's full of folks who break their word, but you keep showing up. That's strength." Lily's lip quivered, but she didn't cry. Not yet. The wind picked up, rattling the fence like bones. Ethan reached through the bars, his calloused hand gentle on her shoulder. "Listen, you're not alone in this wait. You got family out there, chosen, not born, and I'm gonna make sure you know it." In that moment, as fat raindrops began to patter the ground, something shifted. Ethan's crew, scattered across state lines, would hear the call. The Iron Vow Riders didn't ride for glory. They rode for the forgotten oaths, the silent battles. One whisper, and the thunder would roll again, not of storm, but of engines uniting. The days blurred into a rhythm of rain-slicked roads and restless nights for Ethan. He'd parked his bike outside a dingy motel on the edge of town, the neon sign flickering like a dying firefly. Inside, the room smelled of stale coffee and old leather, walls papered with yellowed maps of routes long ridden. Sleep evaded him, haunted by flashes, the explosion in the sand that took his brother, the way promises turned to ash in his hands. He'd left the military fractured, scars snaking across his ribs like accusations. The club had pieced him back, brothers who shared no blood but unbreakable bonds. But this girl, Lily, stirred something deeper, a redemption he hadn't chased. By midweek, he'd learned her story from the shadows. The orphanage director, a stern woman named Mrs. Harlan, spoke in clipped tones over a lukewarm cup of tea in the visitors' lounge. Parents gone in a car wreck, no kin stepped up. She waits because that's what kids do, hold on to fairy tales. Ethan's fists clenched under the table, the moral rot of it all gnawing at him. Systems that warehouse the lost, authorities turning blind eyes for paperwork's sake. It reeked of the corruption he'd fought overseas, now dressed in suits and stamps. He started small. Sundays became his ritual too. He'd pull up on the Harley, engine purring low to not startle her, and they'd talk through the fence. Stories of open roads, stars brighter than city lights, the kind of family that rode into the wind together. Lily's smiles came hesitant at first, then bright, chasing shadows from her face. But whispers spread. The director eyed him warily, muttering about undesirables and protocols. Ethan knew the type. Power clung to rules that served the powerful. Justice bent like a rusted fender. One evening, as dusk painted the sky in bruised purples, trouble brewed. Lily had slipped a note under the fence earlier. "They say I can't see you anymore." Ethan's blood ran hot. He revved the bike, heading straight for the orphanage, under a sky heavy with unspoken threats. The gates clanged open just enough for him to glimpse her, standing defiant, bear in hand. But shadows moved inside, figures in ill-fitting uniforms, voices raised in accusation. Stranger danger, they called it, as if isolation wasn't the real threat. Ethan dismounted, the weight of his past settling like dust. He wasn't here for confrontation, he was here for the promise. "Lily," he called softly, ignoring the glares. "You remember what I said? Family now?" Her small hand gripped the bars. "Yeah, but they won't let me out." The air thickened, rain threatening again, the scent of wet metal sharp. Ethan's phone buzzed in his pocket, a text from Jax, his second in command. "Heard the call, brother. Crews mobilizing, 20 riders inbound." Loyalty, the kind forged in fire, answered without question. This wasn't just about one girl. It was the stand against a world that orphaned the innocent, that let corruption erode the soul. As the first drops fell, Ethan knelt again, voice steady. "Hold on, kid. Dawn's coming, and we'll ride this out together." The moral line blurred, but honor sharpened it. Redemption not in vengeance, but in the quiet act of keeping word. The engines would come, a convoy of chosen kin, turning whispers into thunder. And in that roar, Lily's wait would end, not in abandonment, but in the embrace of a family reclaimed. The rain came down in sheets, turning the orphanage grounds into a slick mirror of the gathering storm. Ethan's boots sank into the mud as he stood firm by the fence, his silhouette a dark anchor against the chaos. Lily's face pressed close to the bars, her breath fogging the cold metal, eyes reflecting the flicker of distant lightning. Inside the compound, the shadows sharpened. 2 orderlies, burly men with faces like weathered stone, flanked the director, Mrs. Harlan. Her arms crossed tight over a clipboard, lips pursed in that institutional disdain that masked deeper fears. "This is private property, sir," she called out, voice slicing through the downpour. "You've overstayed your welcome. The child's safety comes first." Ethan didn't flinch, water streaming down his beard like tears he wouldn't shed. Safety. The word twisted in his gut, echoing the hollow assurances he'd heard in war zones, where orders protected the wrong side. He'd seen kids like Lily before, orphaned by blasts or bureaucracy, left to rot in systems that prized paperwork over pulse. "Safety's what I'm bringing," he replied, tone low and even, carrying over the roar of rain. "Not taking her from you, just asking you to see her for what she is, a fighter, not a file." Lily's small voice cut in, trembling but clear. "Please, Mrs. Harlan, he's my friend. He tells stories about the road, about families that find each other. The director's eyes narrowed, a flicker of something, guilt perhaps, crossing her features before hardening again. The orderlies shifted, hands hovering near radios, the air thick with the scent of ozone and unspoken threats. Ethan caught it all in a glance, the way the fence rattled under the wind, the mud pooling at his feet like spilled ink, the distant rumble that wasn't thunder but something mechanical approaching. Back at the motel that night, after the gates had clanged shut on Lily's hopeful wave, Ethan paced the dim room. The storm had passed, leaving a damp chill that seeped through the cracks. He spread a worn map across the rickety table, marked with pins for his crew's last known spots, scattered like embers from a dying fire. Jax's text burned in his mind. The man was a rock, former medic with hands steady under fire, now running a garage up north. They'd pulled each other from the sands years back, sealing a bond with shared scars and silent nods. Ethan fired off coordinates, a simple message. Need the vow. 1 kid. Systems failin'. Ride dawn. Replies trickled in like sparks igniting. First Jax. On my way, bringing the core. Then Noah, the quiet enforcer with a poet's soul hidden under ink and leather from the coast. Promise calls. Engines hot. Andrew followed, the young hothead who'd lost his own sister to the streets, voice crackling over a call. Count me in, Eth, for the little ones. By midnight, the tally hit 12. Veterans, wanderers, souls who'd traded uniforms for vests, all drawn by the invisible thread of iron vow. They weren't outlaws, they were guardians of the overlooked, riding against the tide of forgotten oaths. Ethan stared at the ceiling, the rains patter a lullaby of resolve, his ribs aching from old wounds as if reminding him this fight was personal, a redemption etched in every mile. Dawn broke grey and unforgiving, the sky a canvas of bruised clouds over Elmwood's winding back roads. Ethan rolled out first, Harley coughing to life with a throaty bellow that scattered birds from the treetops. The air tasted of wet pine and possibility, the first light glinting off dew-kissed chrome. He led the way back to the orphanage, the convoy forming like thunderheads behind him. 20 strong now, bikes in tight formation, engines harmonizing in a low growl that vibrated through the earth. Jax rode shotgun, his frame solid on a customized Indian, nodding as they crested the hill. "What's the play, brother? We stormin' or talkin'?" "Talkin' first," Ethan said, wind whipping his words. "But we stand. Show 'em loyalty ain't negotiable." The group was a tapestry of grit. Noah with his silver-streaked hair flying like a banner, Andrew revving impatient at the rear, and others, Samuel the storyteller, David the mechanic, faces set in quiet determination. They'd left jobs, homes, the pull of the road secondary to this call. No blood tied them, but promises did, forged in foxholes and bar fights. Unbreakable as the chains they once broke free from, the orphanage gates came into view, the chain link glistening under the weak sun. Lily was there already, perched on a low wall despite the chill, her bear tucked under one arm, eyes scanning the horizon. When the roar swelled, she jumped down, a grin breaking through like sunlight. Mrs. Harlan emerged from the main building, flanked by the same orderlies, and now a suited man, local authority, badge gleaming falsely on his chest. "What's this circus?" the suit barked, clipboard forgotten in Harlan's grip. "Disperse, or we'll call it in." Ethan killed his engine, the silence heavy as the bikes lined up like sentinels. He dismounted slow, boots crunching gravel, and walked forward. The crew fanning out behind, not aggressive but unyielding. "No circus, friend, just family showing up." He glanced at Lily, who edged closer to the fence, her small hand waving. The suit's eyes darted, calculating the optics, a wall of leather against institutional grey, the moral weight tipping. Whispers of corruption had reached Ethan's ears, funds siphoned, Kids shuffled like commodities, but proof simmered in the air in Harlan's averted gaze. Jax stepped up, voice calm as a medic's. "We're here for the girl. Papers can wait. Heart can't." The authority man blustered, radio crackling with empty threats, but the convoy held, a living testament to chosen kin. Lily's eyes shone, the weight of Sunday's lifting as Ethan knelt once more. "See, told you dawn brings the ride." Tension coiled, ethical lines drawn in the dust, justice not in fists, but in the stand, the refusal to let innocence fade. The suit backed off a step, the first crack in the facade as the sun climbed higher, casting long shadows of hope over the forgotten gate. And now, I invite you to leave in the comments where you're watching from and the exact hour you heard this story. We wish to know how far these northern confessions travel, and at what moments they reach you. The sun clawed its way higher, burning off the morning mist that clung to the orphanage like a shroud. The convoy's engines idled low, a steady rumble that pulsed through the ground, syncing with the quickened heartbeats of everyone present. Ethan stood at the forefront, his leather vest heavy with the weight of rainwater from the night before, the iron vow emblem catching the light like a badge of quiet defiance. Lily hovered by the fence, her fingers laced through the chain link, knuckles white against the grey metal. The air hummed with tension, sharp as the scent of damp earth and hot exhaust, every breath laced with the unspoken challenge hanging between the bikers and the institutional wall. The suited authority figure, Mr. Caldwell, as he'd introduced himself with a puffed chest, stepped forward, his polished shoes sinking slightly into the gravel. His face was a mask of practiced outrage, eyes flicking from Ethan to the line of riders like a man assessing a storm he couldn't control. "This is harassment," he declared, voice pitched for drama, radio clutched in one hand as if it were a lifeline. "You've got no legal standing here. The girl is under our protection, state-sanctioned, ironclad." Mrs. Harlan lingered behind him, her clipboard a shield, but her gaze darted to Lily. A flicker of unease betraying the facade. The orderlies loomed, arms crossed, their bulk a poor imitation of intimidation against the weathered resolve of the crew. Ethan met Caldwell's stare, unblinking, the scars on his knuckles pulling tight as he flexed his hands. He'd faced worse than bureaucrats in the dunes, men with guns and gods complexes, promising safety while doling out neglect. "Protection," he echoed, the word tasting bitter on his tongue. "That's what you call leaving her to wait alone every Sunday? Systems like yours chew up the small ones and spit out the empty." His voice carried low, not a shout, but a gravelly truth that cut deeper, rippling through the bikers who nodded in silent accord. Jax dismounted beside him, his medic's calm a steady anchor, while Noah scanned the perimeter with eyes honed from years of watching backs in shadowed alleys. Lily's voice piped up, small but piercing the standoff like a ray through clouds. "They're not bad, Mr. Caldwell. Ethan promised he'd come back, and he did, with friends." Her words hung there, innocent and indicting, drawing a murmur from the crew. Andrew, the young one with fire in his veins, revved his bike once, a sharp bark that made the orderlies flinch, but Ethan raised a hand, stilling them. This wasn't about force. It was the moral siege, the slow erosion of lies under the weight of loyalty. He'd buried too many brothers to spill blood over pride, but he'd unearth every buried promise to shield one like her. Caldwell's radio crackled to life, a dispatcher's voice tinny and urgent. "Units en route, keep the peace." The suit's confidence swelled, but Ethan saw the crack, the way his eyes lingered on the growing number of riders, now 25 as stragglers pulled up from side roads, engines joining the chorus like reinforcements in a forgotten war. Samuel, the club's elder with a voice like worn velvet, swung off his vintage chopper and approached, a faded photo tucked in his vest pocket, his own lost kin, a reminder of why they rode. "We've all got stories like hers," Samuel said to no one in particular, loud enough for Harlan to hear. "Families torn by wrecks or wars, left to the mercy of folks who forgot what mercy means." The director shifted, her stern facade fracturing as Lily pressed closer to the fence. "Mrs. Harlan, please, I want to go with them, just for a ride." The plea twisted something in the air, the scent of blooming wildflowers nearby, clashing with the metallic tang of fear. Ethan knelt again, mud staining his knees, and whispered through the bars, "Hang tight, kid. We're not leaving without you." His mind flashed to the desert night, his brother's last breath sealing the vow, protect the vulnerable, build the family that endures. That ghost rode with him now, urging him forward against the tide of red tape and rot. As patrol cars crested the distant hill, lights flashing like false beacons, the crew tightened formation, not a blockade, but a barrier of brotherhood. David, the mechanic with hands blackened from engines and oil, tinkered with a loose chain on his bike, but his eyes never left the gate. "They'll try to divide us," he muttered to Jax. "Talk rights, throw numbers, but we stand on what's right." The first car pulled up, doors slamming with authority, 2 officers stepping out, uniforms crisp, faces skeptical under the rising sun. "Disperse," the lead one barked, hand resting on his belt. "This is a restricted area." Ethan rose slowly, the warmth of the light on his back a quiet ally. "We're here peaceful, just asking for a chance to prove we're kin to her." The officer's gaze swept the group, landing on Lily's hopeful face, then back to Ethan. Whispers of the club's reputation, guardians, not gangs, had preceded them. Tales of quiet interventions in forgotten corners. Caldwell interjected, voice rising, "These men are outsiders, unvetted, a risk." But Harlan unexpectedly spoke up, her tone softer. "The girl's been alone too long, maybe. A supervised visit?" The concession hung fragile, like dew on a spider's web, as the officers conferred. Tension coiled tighter. The engine's low hum, a heartbeat underscoring the ethical standoff. Ethan felt the pull of redemption in his chest, scars aching less under the sun's gaze. This was the vow unfolding, not in glory, but in the patient stand, the refusal to let corruption orphan another soul. Lily's eyes met his, bright with the dawn of possibility, as the world tilted toward justice, one whispered promise at a time. The patrol cars idled, their lights pulsing red and blue against the fence like erratic heartbeats. One officer, a veteran type with crow's feet etching his temples, pulled Ethan aside under the guise of a private word. The air between them smelled of coffee breath and authorities' cologne, the distant whine of a hawk circling overhead, adding to the weight. "Look, I've seen your kind before," the cop said, voice low. "Riders with hearts bigger than the law allows. But this system's got teeth. You push, it bites." Ethan nodded, respecting the candor, his own military days echoing in the man's stance. "Ain't pushing for trouble, just for her to know she's not forgotten." Back with the group, the negotiation dragged, words weaving through the morning haze like smoke from tailpipes. Jax coordinated quietly, phones buzzing with updates from the outer riders. More inbound, a full 30 now, forming a respectful perimeter that spoke volumes without a single raised voice. Noah shared a story with Lily through the fence, his deep timbre painting pictures of coastal sunsets and unbreakable bonds, drawing a laugh from her that cut the tension like sunlight. Andrew paced, fists clenched, but Ethan's steady presence kept the fire banked. This was their way, loyalty as armor, honor as the blade. By noon, the sun beat down merciless, turning the gravel to a shimmering haze. Caldwell's bluster had wilted, sweat beading on his brow as he huddled with Harlan and the officers. Whispers of irregularities surfaced, overcrowded dorms, skimped care, funds that vanished like mist, hinted at by a nervous orderly who'd caught wind of the riders' quiet inquiries. the moral underbelly exposed not by force, but by the simple act of showing up, of refusing to fade. Harlan finally nodded, clipboard trembling slightly. A trial visit supervised for the child's sake. The gates creaked open, a sound like bones sighing in relief, and Lily stepped through, bare clutched tight, her sneakers scuffing the dirt. Ethan extended a hand, calloused palm up, and she took it, small fingers trusting in his grip. The crew watched, a circle of silent witnesses, as she climbed onto the back of his Harley, helmet dwarfing her frame. "Hold on," he murmured, the engine roaring to life beneath them, a promise fulfilled in vibration and wind. They rode out slow, the convoy trailing like a protective shadow, leaving the orphanage's grey walls shrinking in the mirrors. The road stretched open, asphalt warm under tires, the scent of pine and freedom rushing in. For the first time in years, Ethan's chest lightened, the vow's burden shared among brothers. But shadows lingered, questions of permanence, the system's claws not easily shaken. Redemption was a ride, not a destination, and as Lily's arms wrapped around his waist, whispering, "Family," he knew the journey had only begun. The wind whipped through the open road, carrying the sharp tang of pine sap and sun-baked asphalt as Ethan's Harley cut a steady path away from Elmwood's confining shadows. Lily clung to his back, her small arms locked around his waist, the oversized helmet tilting her head like a bobble on a string. The engine's rumble vibrated through them both, a living pulse that drowned out the orphanage's fading clangor behind. The convoy stretched out in a loose V formation, 25 bikes now, their chrome accents flashing like signals in the midday glare. Jax rode parallel on Ethan's left, his Indian scout steady as a heartbeat, while Noah flanked the right, wind tousling his silver hair into wild banners. The air hummed with unspoken solidarity, the kind forged not in boardrooms, but in the grit of shared roads and buried pains. They pulled over at a roadside diner 20 miles out, a weathered relic with peeling red paint and a gravel lot scarred by countless tires. The scent of frying bacon and strong coffee wafted from the open door, mingling with the cooling exhaust as engines sighed to silence. Lily slid off first, legs wobbly from the ride, her eyes wide as she took in the circle of riders dismounting around her, giants in leather but their movements gentle, like guardians emerging from myth. Ethan lifted the helmet from her head, ruffling her tangled hair with a rare softness. "First rule of the road, you eat when the crew does, keeps the strength in." She nodded, clutching her bear tighter, the diner's neon sign buzzing faintly overhead like a hesitant welcome. Inside, the booth creaked under their weight, vinyl seats sticky from years of spills. Jax ordered stacks of pancakes for the table, his medic's precision ensuring extra syrup for Lily, while Samuel spun a low tale of a desert crossing where stars mapped forgotten promises. The girl listened rapt. Fork paused mid-air, her laughter bubbling up like a spring unearthed. Ethan watched from across the scarred formica, the steam from his black coffee curling like ghosts from his past. This trial visit was a crack in the wall, but he knew the system's tendrils ran deep. Calls to authorities, paperwork traps, the slow grind that wore down even the strongest. His phone vibrated on the table, a message from an old contact. "Heard about the orphanage pull? Caldwell's pulling strings, watch your backs." The vow tightened in his chest. Redemption wasn't a single ride, but a relentless stand against the corrosion that orphaned souls. As plates cleared, the door jingled with new arrivals. 3 more riders, faces etched with the mileage of loyalty, pulling up on dusty Kawasaki's. Andrew greeted them with nods and clasps, the group swelling to 28, a family expanding like roots-seeking soil. Lily wandered to the jukebox, coins from Ethan's pocket clinking in, selecting a twangy tune about open highways and second chances. The melody filled the space, softening the edges of worn faces, but Ethan's gaze drifted outside, where the horizon shimmered with heat waves. Shadows of doubt crept in. Was this enough? The accident that took her parents lingered in his mind. An echo of his own losses. The brother who'd whispered that final oath under a merciless sky. He'd failed too many before. This time the promise burned brighter, demanding he build something enduring. Back on the road, the convoy veered toward a shaded overlook, tires crunching over pine needles as they parked in a loose semicircle. The view stretched vast, rolling hills giving way to a distant river, glinting like quicksilver under the climbing sun. Lily scampered to the edge, bare propped on a rock, her questions tumbling out like freed birds. "Do you all live on bikes? What's the farthest you've gone?" Noah knelt beside her, his voice a rumble of gravel and warmth. "Far as the vow takes us, kid. From coast to canyon, chasing what's right." He shared a scar on his forearm, ink swirling around it, a reminder of a barroom brawl defending a veteran's honor. The fight ending not in blows, but in mended fences. The crew gathered loosely, sharing smokes and stories, the air thick with the earthy scent of resin and faint tobacco. Ethan hung back with Jax, maps unrolled on a bike seat, plotting safe havens away from prying eyes. But the idyll fractured with the whine of sirens in the distance, faint at first, then insistent, slicing through the afternoon calm. Dust clouds billowed on the access road below, 2 patrol cars ascending like hounds on a scent. Ethan's jaw set, the moral coil tightening. This was the pushback, the authorities' reflex to clamp down on anything that challenged their brittle order. "They tracked us," Jax murmured, holstering his phone after a quick check. Caldwell's report, unstable elements influencing minor. The riders straightened, a subtle shift from repose to readiness, engines thumbed alive in low growls. Lily froze, her hand finding Ethan's instinctively, the warmth of her palm an anchor against the rising tension. The cars pulled up short, doors flaring open to reveal the same officers from the gates, faces hardened by protocol. The lead one approached, badge catching the light like a false star. "Mr. Hale, we need to talk. The directors filed concerns, potential endangerment. The girls to return immediately." His partner eyed the group warily, hand near his holster, the air now laced with the acrid bite of urgency. Ethan stepped forward, Lily tucked behind him, his voice steady as forged steel. "She's safer here than in those walls. We've got no harm in mind, just the promise of family." The officer's eyes flicked to the child, then the riders. A wall of quiet conviction that spoke louder than shouts. Whispers of the club's clean record circulated, interventions that saved more than they scarred. But the law's blinders narrowed the view. Jax interjected smoothly, pulling a folder from his saddlebag, gathered affidavits from past good deeds, notarized by sympathetic locals. "Check the facts, officer. We're not taking, we're offering." The standoff stretched, sun dipping toward the hills, casting elongated shadows that danced like unspoken dilemmas. Lily peeked out, her voice small but clear. "I want to stay, please." The words hung, a poetic plea against the machine, cracking the officer's resolve. The lead one radioed back, conferring in hushed tones, the river's murmur below underscoring the ethical precipice. Ethan felt the vow pulse, a redemption woven in patience and truth, not fury. As the sun edged lower, painting the sky in amber strokes, the tension held, justice teetering on the edge of a whispered oath, the family chosen refusing to yield. If you felt the pull of this ride in your heart, smash that like button below. It helps these stories of loyalty and redemption reach more souls who need them. The sun dipped lower, bleeding orange across the overlook's rugged edge, where the river below twisted like a silver vein through the valley. The patrol car's lights throbbed in staccato rhythm, casting erratic shadows over the riders' parked bikes, their chrome dulled by the lengthening dusk. Ethan's hand rested lightly on Lily's shoulder, a grounding weight amid the thickening air, heavy with the scent of cooling metal and the faint, briny whisper of the water far below. The lead officer, Sergeant Reyes, his name tag glinting under the fading light, stood firm, his posture a rigid line against the convoy's quiet encirclement. His partner's fingers drummed near the radio, eyes scanning the group like a hawk over prey. But the riders held their ground, engines idling in a low, unified hum that vibrated through the pine-scented breeze. "We can't just take your word for it," Reyes said, his voice edged with the weariness of too many calls like this. The report from the orphanage paints a different picture. Strangers swooping in, no vetting, potential risks to the child. He glanced at Lily, her face half hidden behind Ethan's frame, the stuffed bear dangling limply from her free hand. The girl's eyes, wide and unblinking, reflected the patrol lights like distant stars, a silent plea that tugged at the moral fibers, even in a man bound by badges. Ethan felt the vow stir deeper, an echo from his brother's last breath in the desert heat. Protect what's fragile, build what endures. He'd carried that scar across continents, now facing it down in this sun-bleached standoff where authorities' shield often hid the rot beneath. Jack stepped forward, his medic's calm a steady counterpoint, the folder of affidavits extended like an olive branch forged in ink and truth. "Sergeant, read it. We've pulled folks from wrecks, stood vigil for the lost, clean slate, no shadows." The pages rustled in the wind, detailing quiet acts. A veteran pulled from the bottle, a family mended after fire claimed their home, all stamped with the quiet authority of those who'd witnessed. Noah nodded from his spot, silver hair catching the last rays, his voice a low rumble. "Ain't about storming gates, it's about showing up when the world's checked out." The crew murmured agreement. A chorus of gravelly tones, blending with the river's distant rush, their leather vests creaking like old sails in the gathering twilight. Lily tugged at Ethan's sleeve, her whisper cutting through the tension like a cool stream. "Are they gonna make me go back?" The question hung fragile, stirring the air with the earthy tang of fear, sweat, and resolve. Ethan crouched to her level, the gravel biting into his knees, his scarred hand cupping her chin gently. "Not if we stand true, kid. Family don't fold easy." Memories flashed, his own youth, orphaned by war's cruel math, until the club became the kin he'd never known. This was redemption's slow burn, not a blaze of glory, but the patient fire of loyalty against the system's indifferent grind. Above them, the sky deepened to indigo, stars pricking through like promises waiting to ignite. Reyes flipped through the folder, his brow furrowing as details sank in. The Iron Vow Riders' interventions, whispers of corruption they'd quietly unraveled in other towns, funds diverted from the needy, officials turning blind eyes for favors. Caldwell's name surfaced in a side note, a pattern of complaints against those who questioned the status quo. The sergeant's partner shifted uneasily, radio silent now, the weight of ethics pressing in. "This changes things," Reyes admitted, voice softening as he eyed the child. "But protocol, we need to verify with the director." He pulled out his phone, the screen's glow harsh against the encroaching night, dialing Harlan's line. The conversation crackled faintly, her protests tinny and defensive, laced with the strain of exposed cracks, overcrowding reports, skimped provisions, the moral debt piling like unpaid tolls. As the call ended, the convoy's engines revved once in unison. A subtle show of unity, not threat, the sound rolling down the hill like thunder's promise. Andrew, the young firebrand, clenched his jaw but held back, guided by Ethan's nod. Samuel leaned against his chopper, arms crossed, murmuring to David about the roads ahead, safe houses tucked in forgotten valleys, where vows like this could root deep. The air cooled, carrying the crisp bite of evening dew from the river, mingling with the faint oil from idling bikes. Lily's grip tightened on Ethan's vest, her breath steadying as the standoff tilted, the officers conferring in hushed tones under the patrol light's pulse. Reyes pocketed his phone, the lines on his face deepening in the half-light. Harlan's backing a temporary extension, supervised of course, but this ain't over. Social services will circle back by morning. It was a concession, hard won, in the ethical arena, where truth outlasted bluster. Relief rippled through the crew, quiet claps on shoulders, but Ethan's gaze stayed sharp, knowing the system's claws retracted only to strike again. He lifted Lily onto his bike's seat, the leather warm from the sun, her laughter breaking free as the engine purred to life beneath her. "One night on the road," he said, helmet secured with care. "We'll make it count." The convoy reformed, headlights piercing the dusk like beacons, rolling out in a disciplined wave that left the patrol cars in the dust clouds. They veered toward a secluded cabin Jax knew, nestled in the hills where pine shadows swallowed secrets. The road wound upward, twists revealing glimpses of the valley below, now a patchwork of fading light and emerging stars. Lily's arms wrapped around Ethan's middle, the wind rushing past with the scent of wild sage and freedom's edge. Jax rode close, signaling stops for water and whispers of plans. Contacts in the network, ways to formalize the bond without the red tape's noose. Noah's bike hummed alongside, his silhouette a steadfast shadow, sharing nods that spoke of battles won in patience, not punches. At the cabin, a low-slung structure of weathered logs under a canopy of evergreens, the group dismounted into the hush of night. Fireflies danced like living embers, the crackle of a built blaze soon joining the night's symphony. Lily explored the porch, bear in tow, her questions lighting the faces around the fire pit. Tales of rides through canyons, stars brighter than any city glow, the unbreakable chain of chosen kin. Ethan sat apart at first, nursing a coffee black as the void overhead, the day's weight settling like dew. The vow pulsed steady now, a redemption etched in every shared glance, but dawn loomed with its own threats. Authorities regrouping, Caldwell's strings pulling tighter. Jax joined him, voice low over the flames' pop. "We'll fight clean, brother, for her, for all the weights that end empty." As embers glowed against the dark, Lily curled by the fire, eyelids heavy, the bear a soft sentinel in her lap. The crew encircled, guardians in the flickering light, their stories weaving a tapestry of honor's quiet might. Ethan watched her sleep, the scars on his soul easing just a fraction, the promise transforming from burden to bridge. But in the distance, the faint whine of engines, not theirs, hinted at shadows pursuing, the moral road twisting toward a final stand. Night deepened, stars bearing witness, as the family forged in thunder prepared for the light's reckoning. The fire's embers pulsed like a fading heartbeat in the cabin's clearing, casting flickering gold across the circle of riders gathered under the star-pricked canopy. The night air hung cool and crisp, laced with the smoky bite of burning pine and the distant murmur of the river carving its endless path below. Lily slept soundly on a wool blanket near the flames, her chest rising and falling in the rhythm of unburdened dreams, the stuffed bear tucked under her chin like a faithful sentinel. Ethan sat on a weathered log, his coffee mug gone cold in his grip, eyes tracing the shadows beyond the firelight where the pines stood like silent watchers. The day's concessions had bought time, a fragile bridge over the chasm of bureaucracy, but the faint whine of engines from the valley road below confirmed what his instincts screamed. The pursuit hadn't ended. Caldwell's web of influence stretched longer than he'd hoped, pulling strings to reclaim what the system deemed its property. Jax settled beside him, the creak of leather punctuating the quiet, his face illuminated in sharp angles by the fire's glow. Scouts spotted 2 unmarked vans heading this way. Likely social services with backup. They'll spin it as rescue, but we know the play. Isolate her. Bury the truth under forms and fear. Noah nodded from across the pit, his silver hair a ghostly halo, sharpening a pocket knife not for threat but habit, the blade catching sparks like captured stars. We've danced this before, Eth. In the sands, waiting for dawn patrols. We hold the line with words first, vows second. The crew stirred, a low murmur rippling through them. Andrew checking ammo in a flashlight beam. Samuel murmuring prayers from an old dog-eared book. David tinkering with a bike's chain to steady his hands. They were a mosaic of scars and stories. Veterans who'd traded foxholes for highways. Wanderers who'd found purpose in the roar of engines and the weight of kept promises. No blood bound them, but the iron vow did, an oath etched deeper than ink, calling them to stand against the indifferent machine that orphaned the innocent. Ethan rose, boots crunching fallen needles, the chills seeping through his vest, like a reminder of vulnerabilities left unguarded. He glanced at Lily, her face soft in sleep, unmarred by the Sundays of waiting that had carved lines too deep for 8 years. His brother's voice echoed again, gravelly from that starlit desert vigil. Family's the fight you choose, Eth. Don't let the world steal the small ones. He'd buried that under miles of blacktop, letting the road numb the ache. But Lily had unearthed it. A redemption not sought but seized, pulling him from wanderer to guardian. The engines grew louder now, headlights piercing the tree line like accusatory eyes, the vans rumbling to a halt at the cabin's perimeter, doors slammed, figures emerging, suited officials with clipboards and stern faces, flanked by officers whose badges gleamed falsely under the moon. Caldwell led them, his posture puffed with the arrogance of unchecked power, the air thickening with the scent of exhaust and entitlement. "Mr. Hale," Caldwell called, voice slicing the night like a poorly aimed blade, "this ends now. The child's return is non-negotiable. Your little vigilante show disrupts order, endangers her further." Flashlights swept the group, illuminating the fire's warm circle against the cold intrusion, Lily stirring slightly but not waking. Ethan stepped forward, the crew rising as one behind him, a wall of quiet resolve that needed no raised voices. "Order?" he replied, tone steady as the river's flow. "You mean the kind that leaves her waiting alone, while funds for her care vanish into pockets? We've seen your ledgers, Caldwell. Whispers from folks tired of the rot." Jax held up a tablet, screen glowing with compiled reports, diverted donations, falsified inspections, patterns of neglect that painted the orphanage not as sanctuary but sieve. The officials shifted, murmurs breaking their ranks. One officer, Reyes again, his face etched with reluctant recognition, eyeing the evidence with a frown that deepened the crow's feet. The standoff stretched, tension coiling like smoke from the dying fire, the night's chill pressing in as stars wheeled overhead. Lily woke then, rubbing her eyes, her small form slipping to Ethan's side, hand finding his in the dark. "What's happening?" she whispered, voice threading through the fray like a child's unfiltered truth. Caldwell faltered, his gaze landing on her, the moral weight of her presence cracking his facade. "This is for your safety, young lady," he said, but the words rang hollow, echoed by the officer's uneasy glances. Noah spoke up, his rumble carrying the weight of shared pains. "Safety's what we offer, rides under open skies, stories by fires like this, a family that shows up." Samuel added a photo from his pocket, passed hand to hand. Faded images of rescues past, kids like her finding homes in the club's network of safe harbors. The evidence mounted, not in shouts, but in the quiet accumulation of truths, eroding the authorities' brittle armor. Reyes conferred with his partner, radios crackling softly, the night symphony underscoring the ethical pivot. "Stand down," he finally said to the suits, voice firm. This looks like more than protocol. We'll need a full review, starting with those records. Caldwell's face twisted, protests dying on his lips as the van's engines coughed back to life, retreating into the dark, with taillights fading like defeated embers. Relief washed through the clearing, the crew exhaling in unison. But Ethan knew it was no clean victory. Investigations would drag, battles linger in courtrooms and calls. Yet as Lily hugged his leg, her whisper fierce, "I want to stay with you all," the vow solidified, a bridge from promise to permanence. Dawn crept in with a blush of rose across the hills, the cabin stirring to the scent of brewing coffee and sizzling bacon over rekindled flames. The convoy reformed under the first light, bikes gleaming with dew, engines harmonizing in a low thunder that chased shadows away. Lily rode with Ethan, helmet snug, her laughter mingling with the wind as they crested the rise, the valley unfolding like an open palm. Jax led the scouting flank. Noah brought up the rear. The full 30 riders, a river of chrome and conviction flowing toward horizons unclaimed. Social services would circle, papers demand signatures, but the family chosen moved faster than forms. Safe houses waiting, allies in quiet corners ready to vouch. Ethan's scars ached less in the rush, the brother's ghost-riding shotgun in spirit, the redemption complete in the girl's bright eyes mirrored back. They paused at a sunlit meadow miles on, wildflowers nodding in the breeze, Lily darting among them with her bear, the crew forming a loose guard. "This is home now?" she asked, twirling in the grass. Ethan knelt, the earth warm under his palms. "Home's wherever the vow takes us, kid, and it takes us forward, together." The sun climbed, painting their path in gold, the road ahead a testament to honor's quiet legacy. Promises kept, families forged, justice won not in fury, but in the enduring stand. Engines roared anew, carrying them into the light, where weights ended and wings of chosen kin spread wide. Thank you for riding this journey with us to the end. Stories like these thrive when shared. If Ethan's vow touched your soul, hit that subscribe button and join the crew for more tales of redemption on the open road. Your support keeps the thunder rolling.